There, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws. We're playing with something today. It's uh, make it a little bigger. We have like this, me smart over here, so you can do it. We have the screen is a little narrower on that side. We have a lot of dead space here. So voila, it is this. So again, welcome to part 4, which looks at chapter 24, book 24, book 25, and book 26, which mostly deal with religion, the question of religion and its impact on the laws. So this part 5, will focus mostly generally on this question of these other themes. So today's top book, 24, will, on the laws in their relation to the religion established in each country, examine in respect to its practices and within itself. Okay, so the question of religion. Right. Chapter 1 on religion in general. Just as one can judge among the shadows, there are at sorry. Just as one can judge among shadows those that are the least dark, and among abysses that are the least deep. So among the false religions, one can seek the ones that are in the most conformity with the goods of society. So therefore, the idea we can look at dark shadows, which are more dark, or the least dark, right, the less dark, and then the abysses, which is the least deep. We can allow. He's making an argument of comparison, right? The ones of the most conformity, these false religions, which are most conformity with the good of society. And the ones that, though they do not have the effect of leading men to the felicities of the next life, can most contribute to their happiness in this one. So this is interesting. He's saying that, well, the question is not so much the felicity of the next life we're concerned with, but the happiness in this life. Therefore, I shall examine the various religions of the world only in relation to the good that can be drawn from them in the civil state. Whether I speak of the one whose roots okay, the ones whose roots are in heaven, or those whose roots are on earth. Okay, so that's one. In this work, I am not a theologian, but one who writes about politics. There may be things that would be wholly true only in a human way of thinking, for they have not been at all considered in relation to the more sublime truth. So therefore, he's concerned with the human truth, the human effects of religion on the humanity, and particularly he's a writer of politics, not a theologian. So he's concerned about the well of felicity and stability in the state, right? So okay, this is a little dust here. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. With regard to the true religion, the slightest fairness will show that I have never claimed to make its interest cede to public interest, but to unite them both. Now, in order to unite them, they must be known. So therefore, the question is, he says, okay, about false religions, we're going to look at the ones like this. But then again, I'm not going to deny that this. I'm not going to say true religion. I have never claimed to make its interest cede to political interests, but only to know what is the interest of the religion and what is the interest of the public interest. Or what the Christian religion, which orders men to love one another, no doubt wants the best political laws and the best civil laws for each people, because those laws are after it the greatest good men can receive. So therefore, this is a kind of a So the Christian religion must love one another, right? It tells us that we should love one another. Therefore, it must want the best political laws and the best civil laws for each people, because these laws, after the Christianity, are the greatest good men can receive and give, right? Give and receive. Give and receive. Chapter 2, Bayle's paradox. Mr. Bayle claims to have proven that it is better to be an atheist than an idolater. Okay, this is Pierre Ber's Pensées, the versions of the creation of the Penaz, Pensée. So therefore this is Bales, right? That, in other terms, it is less dangerous to have no religion at all than to have a bad one. That's what he's saying there. I should prefer, he says, for one to say of me that I do not exist than for one to say that I'm a wicked man. This is only sophistry, founded on the fact that it is no use to mankind for one to believe that a certain man exists, while it is quite useful for one to believe that God exists. So therefore, it's a sophistry. And there's no use to mankind whether one believes a certain man exists, but it's quite useful for man to believe God exists. From the idea that he is from the idea that he is not follows the idea of our independence, or if we cannot have this idea, that of our rebellion. To say that to say that religion gives no motive for restraint because it does not always restrain is to say that the civil laws are not a motive for restraint either. In other words, just because people can breach the law doesn't mean that there's no laws don't restrain. Just because someone can breach it or ignore it does not restrain. Doesn't mean that it does not restrain. It is the reason. It is to reason incorrectly against religion to collect in a large work a long enumeration of the evils that it has produced, without also making one of the good things that it has done. If I wanted to recount all the evils that civil laws, monarchy, and public governments have produced in the world, I would say frightening things. Even if it was useless for subjects to have religion, it would not be useless for princes to have one, and to whiten with foam the only bridle that can hold those who fear no human laws. So therefore, it's he says that even if there is, in other words, this is a very interesting thing. Even if it's useless to believe that, uh, uh, even if it was useless for subjects to have a religion, it would not mean princes would. It would be useful for princes to have a bridle that could hold in fear those who fear no human law. They're bridled a restraining mechanism that they don't fear human laws. They fear only the divine. A prince who loves and fears religion is a lion who yields to the hand that caresses him or the voice that pacifies him. The one who fears and hates religion is like a wild beast who gnaws the chain that keep them from throwing themselves on passerbys. He who has no religion at all is that terrible animal that feels its liberty. It feels its liberty only when it claws and devours. So this is what he says: the lion is something. The chains of religion makes it. Who fears religion is one that the hand that caresses him and the voice that pacifies him. Right. The one who hates religion is going to be the one that gnaws and grief and believes that liberty is only when I gnawing and grieving. Um, um, It is not a question of knowing whether it would be better for a certain man or a certain people, to be without religion than to abuse the one that. It is not a question of knowing whether it would be better for a certain man or a certain people to be without religion. Would it be better for a certain man or a certain people to be without religion than to abuse the one that they have, but of knowing which is the lesser evil? That is sometimes that one sometimes abuses religion, or that there be none among men. So what is worse? That some people is not to be have religion. So therefore, the question is not whether it's advantageous or better that a certain person or certain people have religion or not, but rather what's worse, we're knowing which is the lesser evil, whether those who abuse religion or those who have none. The communists and the Nazis show us clearly those who have no religion have and substitute something else for religion are far more inhumane than religious people. In that sense, even at Christianity at its worst, right, or even Islam at its worst. In order to diminish the horrors of atheism, one accused idolatry too much. It is not true that when the ancients raised altars to some vice, it meant that they loved the vice. On the contrary, it meant that they hated it. When the Lacedaemonians raised the chapel to fear, it did not mean that this bellicose nation begged fear to take possession of the hearts of Lacedaemonians in battle. There were divinities who were asked not to inspire crime, and others who were asked to turn it away. So therefore, this is the idea that this is his point about that just because you give an altar to something or make a notion of a god doesn't mean that you think it's a good thing. It may be something to kind of to ward away, or to, as he says here, chapter 3. Moderate government is better suited to Christian religion, and despotic government to Mohammedans, so Islam. Right? So this is interesting. The Christian religion is remote from pure despotism. The gentleness so recommended in the gospel stand opposed to the despotic fury with which a prince would mete out its own justice and exercise its cruelties. As this religion forbids having more than one wife, princes here are less confined, less separated from their subjects, and consequently more human. They are more disposed to give laws to themselves and more capable of feeling that they cannot do everything. Whereas Mahometan princes constantly kill or are killed. Among Christian religion makes princes less timid. The Christian prince religion makes princes less timid and consequently less cruel. The prince counts on his subjects, and the subjects on the prince. Remarkably, the Christian religion, which seems to have no other object than the felicity of the other life, is also our happiness in this one. Right? In spite of this, the size of the Ethiopian empire and the vice of its climate, the Christian religion has kept despotism from being established there and has carried the mores and laws of Europe to the middle of Africa. The crown prince of Ethiopia enjoys a principality and gives his subjects an example of love and obedience. Not far from there, one sees the Mohammedan clothes of the children of the king of Sennar. At the king's death, the council sends them off to be slaughtered in favor of the one who mounts the throne. Right? Let us envision, on the one hand, the continual massacres of the kings and leaders of the Greeks and Romans, and on the other, the destruction of savage peoples and towns by Tamerlane and Genghis Khan, the very leaders who ravaged Asia. And we shall see that we owe Christianity both a certain political right in government and a certain right of nations in war, for which human nature can never be suitably grateful. So he's saying that look at what happened look at the slaughter in the Greek and Romans, how the ancient Greeks and Romans slaughtered, look at their leaders, how they killed their leaders, and how they even in other words, not only Christianity brought not only certain political right in government, but also certain right of the laws of nation. It humanized. And not only puts a human touch to government, it also puts to the laws of nation, the conflict in that sense. The right of nations among ourselves has the result that victory leaves the vanquished with these great things: life, liberty, laws, goods, and always religion, when one does not blind oneself. So therefore, the European laws, the Christian law, life, liberty, laws, goods, and always religion. One can say that the people of Europe today are no more disunited than they were peoples and armies, or the armies themselves in the Roman Empire when it became despotic and military. On the one hand, the armies waged war with one another, and on the other, they were allowed to take the spoils of the town and to divide and confiscate the lands. Chapter 4. the consequence of the character of the Christian religion and that of the Mohammedan one. From the character of the Christian religion and that of the Mohammedan religion, one should, without further examination, embrace the one and reject the other. For it is much more evident to us that a religion should soften the morals of men than it is that the religion is true. It is a misfortune for human nature when religion is given by the conqueror. The Muhammad religion, which speaks only with the sword, continues to act on men with the destructive spirit that founded it. The history of Sabbatico on Diodorus, the biblical historian, right? One of the pastoral kings, is remarkable. The god of Thebes appeared to him in a dream and ordered him to put to death all the princes of Egypt. He judged that the gods were no longer pleased were no longer pleased for him to reign, because they ordered him to do a thing so contrary to their unusual will. He withdrew into Ethiopia. Okay, right? The god of Thebes appeared to him. So he put the death prince. He withdrew into Ethiopia. So that's very interesting in this regard. Chapter 5. That the Catholic religion better suits a monarchy than the Protestant religion is better adapted to a republic. Okay? When a religion is born and is formed in a state, it usually follows the plan of the government in which it is established. For men who accept it and those who make it accepted entertain scarcely any ideas about the police other than those of the state which they were born. So therefore, in other words, he's arguing the idea of police means reinforcement of morals and social behavior than those of the state they were born. This is the idea. This is people. In other words, usually follows the plan of the government in which established. For the men who accept it and those who make it accepted entertain scarcely any ideas of police other than the ones who are born. Right? When 2 centuries ago the Christian religion suffered the unfortunate division that divided it into Catholic and Protestant, the peoples of the North embraced Protestant religion, and those of the South kept the Catholic. This is because the people of the North have and will always have a spirit of independence and liberty that the people of the South do not. And because a religion that has no viable leader is better suited to the independence fostered by the climate than it is the religion of the climate, than is the religion that has one, a visible leader. In the very countries in which the Protestant religion was established, revolutions were made on the plan of the political state. As the great princes were on his side, Luther could scarcely have given them a taste for ecclesiastical authority without outward preeminence. And as the people who lived in republics and the obscure townsmen of the monarchies were on his side, Calvin could easily avoid establishing preeminences and dignitaries. Each of these two religions could believe itself the most perfect. Calvinism considering itself in more conformity with what Jesus had said, and Lutheranism with what the apostle had done. So therefore, this is double-sided. Now, chapter 6. Another of Baal's paradoxes. Baal, after insulting all religion, stigmatized the Christian religion. He dares propose that a state formed by true Christians would not continue to exist. Why not? Because citizens indefinitely enlightened about their duties and having a great zeal to perform, they would sense the right of natural defense. The more they believed they owed to the religion, the more they would think they owed to their homeland. The principle of Christianity engraved in their heart would be infinitely stronger than the false honor of monarchies, the human virtue of republics, and that of the servile feudal despotic states. It is astonishing that one can impute to this great man a misunderstanding of the spirit of his own religion, an inability to distinguish the orders for the establishment of Christianity from Christianity itself, and the precepts of the Gospels from their councils. When a legislature, instead of giving laws, has given counsel, it is because he has seen that his counsels, when they are ordained like laws, would be contrary to the spirit of the laws. And this is the point. that how can this great man impute to this great man a misunderstanding? So therefore, this is that there's the council versus laws, and the reason why the Christianity did not form laws is because he felt that those laws would be contrary to the spirit of the laws. Or in other words, his counsel would be contrary to how the spirit of laws. Chapter 7 on the laws of perfection in religion. Human laws make to speak to human laws made to speak to the spirit should give precepts and no counsels at all. A religion made to speak to the heart should give many counsels but few precepts, commands or dictates. Right? So therefore, human laws that speak to the spirit should give respects but no counsel. And then religion made to speak to the heart should give counsels but few respect. When, for example, it gives rules, not for the good but for the better, not for what is good but for what is perfect, it is suitable for these to be counsels and not laws. For perfection does not concern men or things universally. So therefore, this is the idea. Once you see perfection, this is better as counsel rather than laws. Moreover, if these are laws, they will have to be an infinity of others, so that the first ones will be observed. Celibacy was a counsel of Christianity. When it was made into a law for certain people, for a certain order of people, new laws had to be made every day in order to bring men to observe the first one. All right? Okay, this is bibliothèque, altars of ecclesiastical altars. Right? The legislature tired himself. He tired society. Making men execute by precept what those who love perfection would have executed by counsel. So therefore, in other words, the lawgiver who does this will tire himself out. He will keep on exercising and go beyond the capacity of what law can do, and it will tire himself out. And whereas making men execute by precept, by dictate or command, what those who love perfection would have executed by counsel. Right. Chapter 8 on the agreement of the laws of morality with those with religion. So the agreement is an agreement of the laws of morality with those of religion. In a country where one has the misfortune of having a religion not given by God, it is always necessary for it to be in agreement with morality, because religion, even a false one, is the best warrant men can have of the intrigue of men. So therefore, even a false religion is the best warrant men can have of the intrigue of men. The principal points of the religion of the people of Pegu are not to kill, not to steal, to avoid immodesty, to cause no displeasure to one fellow's men, and instead to do him all the good one can. Further, they believe that one can be saved in any religion whatsoever. This makes these people, though they are proud and poor, show gentleness and compassion to unfortunates. Chapter 9 on the essences. Essences. The essences, sex, this is the Old Testament, New and Old Testament connected with the history of the Jews, right? The essence took an oath to observe justice towards men, to do no harm to anyone, even in order to obey, to hate unjust men, to keep faith with everyone, to command with modesty, and always take side of the truth, and to flee all illicit gain. So this is the that's now what a member of ancient Jewish aesthetic sect of the second period BC to the second century AD, who lived in highly organized communities and held properties in common. The essences were widely regarded as the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Right. So that's this sect of Judaism. And therefore this is observe justice towards men, do no harm to anyone. So, okay, next. Chapter 10 on the Stoic sect. The various sects of philosophy among the ancients could be considered as kinds of religion. There has never been one whose precepts were more worthy of men and more appreciative of forming good men than that of the Stoics. And if I could, for a moment, cease to think I am a Christian, I would not be able to keep myself from numbering the destruction of Zeno's sect among the misfortunes of all mankind. So therefore, this is the Stoics in that sense are kind of seen as, if I can't be a Christian, the Stoics are probably a better, if we understand this philosophy sect. It exaggerated only those things in which there is a greatness, for scorn of pleasure and pains, for which there is greatness. Scorn of play exaggerate the scorn for pleasure and pains. It alone knew how to make citizens. It alone made great men. It alone made great emperors. Right? This is I'm not sure that it made citizens. This is a question. I think this Stoicism cries when the political world is gone. It makes men moral. It doesn't make Cicero and that stuff talks about this as the rise of Stoicism occurs at the end of the end of the collapse of the republic and the beginning of the empire, and it basically replaces citizenship and the virtues of citizenship with private virtues, right? That's the whole point of Diophices, right? He's writing this Diophices Cicero because he can no longer rely on the city will educate his son, so he has to write this to educate his children to be how to be good men, right? So let us momentarily lay aside the revealed truths. Seek in all of nature, and you will find no greater object than the Anatones, the Anatones, Julian. A vote thus wretched from me will not make me an accomplice to his apostasy. No, since him there had been no prince more worthy of governing men. While the Stoics considered wealth, human greatness, suffering, sorrow, and pleasure to be vain things, they were occupied only with working for men's happiness and in exercising the duties of society. It seemed that they regarded the sacred spirit which they believed to be within themselves as a kind of favorable providence watching over mankind. Born for society, they believed that their destiny was to work with it. It was the less burdensome than their rewards were all within themselves. As happy in their philosophy alone, it seemed that only the happiness of others could increase their own. So again, this is this line. Born for society, believed that all their destinies was to work for it, as it was less burdensome as their rewards were for all within themselves, right? As happiness in their philosophy alone. So in other words, they're in their philosophy, doing it, they got their own happiness. It seemed that only the happiness of others could increase their own happiness. Chapter 11 on contemplation. Men being made to preserve, feed, and clothe themselves, and to do all the things done in society, religion could not give them an overtly contemplative life. So, therefore, in other words, given this extent, men being made to preserve, feed, this done in all to do all things done in society, religion should not give them an overly contemplative life. Mohammedans become speculative by habit. They pray 5 times a day, and each time they must do something that makes them turn their backs on all that belongs to this world. This forms them in speculation. Add to this the indifference towards all things given by the dogma of an inflexible destiny, given this by the dogma of an inflexible destiny. If, moreover, other causes concur to inspire the detachment, as when the harshness of the government or the laws concerning the ownership of land give a spirit of uncertainty, all is lost. The religion of the Gibbers formerly caused the kingdom of Persia to flourish, It corrected the bad effects of despotism. Today, the Mohammedan religion destroys that same empire, okay, the Persian. So the gibbets corrected the despotism of that, but Islam destroys what good that was done in it, right? Chapter 12 of penances. It is well for penances to be joined with an idea of work, not with the idea of idleness, with the idea of the good, not with the idea of the extraordinary, with the idea of the frugal, not with the idea of avarice. So therefore, if you're going to make people do penance, penance should be dealing with work, not idleness, with the idea of the good, not the extraordinary, what is good, beneficial, right? Or not the extraordinary, and the ideas of frugality, not with avarice, right? Chapter 13 in the inexplicable crimes. From the passage in this book of the Pontiffs reported by Cicero, passages in the books of the Pontiffs reported by Cicero, that's what? That's De Legibus, right? What remains of De Legibus. It seems that among the Romans there were okay. In other words, crime inexpiable, inexpiable crimes that you cannot get rid of the sin for. It was unremovable in that sense. Crimes. Yeah, it says. Let's look at this. This is uh, uh, unexpiable, as so bad as to be impossible to exculpate. 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 To remove yourself from that thing. And it is on this that the Sozomen bases the account that so nicely poisons the motives of Constantine's conversion, and on this that Julian bases his bitter mockery of that conversion in his Caesars. So therefore, this is like June apostate, right? They convert. In other words, this is what Sozomen bases account that which poisons this. The pagan religion, which prohibited only some glaring crimes, which check the heart and check the hand and abandon the heart, could have inexpressive crimes. In other words, crimes that cannot be forgiven, crimes that can be. But a religion that envelops all the passions, that is that is no more jealous of acts than of desires and thoughts, that attaches us not by some few chains, but by innumerable threads, that leaves human injustice behind to begin another justice, that is made in order to lead constantly from repentance to love and from love to repentance, that puts a great mediator between the judge and the criminal, a great judge between the just man and the mediator. And such a religion should not have inex, inexpiable crimes, crimes that can be expiated or removed. But though it gives fear, and expectations to all, it makes them feel sufficiently that if there is no crime that is inexpiable by its nature, yet a whole life can be so. That it would be very dangerous to harry mercy constantly with new crimes and new expiations. Acts of making amends or reparations for guilt or wrongdoing. Atonement, in other words, new crimes and that troubled uh, that troubled over old debts, never settled with the Lord. We should fear contracting new ones, overfilling the cup, and reaching to the point at which with paternal goodness ends. So therefore, they have to be careful here. In other words, don't make two crimes that you can't ask for forgiveness for, can't be atoned, can't be resolved, that can't be removed. So expiations, new expiations. So therefore, this is that. But though it gives fears and exemptions to all, it makes them feel sufficiently that if there is no crime that is expiable by its nature, and yet the whole life can be so, right? That it would be very dangerous to harry mercy constantly with new crimes and new explanations. Chapter 14. How the force of religion bears on that of the civil laws. As religion and the civil laws should aim principally to make good citizens of men, so therefore, as religion and civil law should aim principally to make good citizens of men, one sees that when either of these departs from this end, the other should aim more towards it. The less repressive religion is, the more civil law should repress. So therefore, the civil law, in other words, you need to make what? Make good citizens. If the religion does not repress, the laws need to repress. And if the religion is repressed, then the laws have to be more gentle. Thus, in Japan, as the dominant religion has almost no dogmas and presupposes neither paradise or hell, the laws, in order to supplement it, have been made with an extraordinary severity that has been executed with an extraordinary punctiliousness. Okay, this is a tough word. It's punctuous means punctual means like issues means verbal, so therefore it means that it must intensity and extraordinary specificness, intensity of the execution of law. When religion establishes the dogma of the when religion establishes the dogma of the necessary of human action, right, the penalties of the law should be more severe and the police more vigilant, so that men who without them would let themselves go will base their decisions on these other motives. But if the religion establishes a dogma of liberty, if it is something entirely else. It is something else again. So therefore, if the religion what? If when religion established a dogma of the necessity of human action, the penalties of the law should be more severe, right? In the police verdict, with who without them would let themselves go, right? But when but if the religion establishes the dogma of liberty, right, it is something else. From laziness of the soul arises the Mahatman dogma of predestination, and from this dogma of predestination is one laziness of the soul. One has said, it is decreed by God, so one must rest. So one must rest. In such a case, the law should arouse men made drowsy by the religion. When religion condemns things that civil law should permit, there is the danger that civil laws would permit on their side what religion should condemn, as one of the things always indicates a defect in the harmony and perfection of ideas, which spreads to others. Thus the Tartars of Genghis Khan, who for whom it was a sin and even a capital crime to put a knife into the fire, to lean on a whip, to beat a horse with his bridle, or to break one bone with another, believed that there was no sin in violating faith, ravaging goods of others, injuring a man, or killing him. In a word, laws that cause what is indifferent to be regarded as necessary, having the drawback of causing what is necessary to be considered indifferent. Therefore, this is his point, that the danger here is that the laws which make you to focus on and deal with what is indifferent and regard them as necessary causes the thing for us to treat with indifference the necessary things. In Formosa, the Formosans believe in a kind of hell, but it is for punishing those who have failed to go naked in certain seasons, who have worn clothes of linen and not of silk, who have gathered oysters, and who have acted without consulting the songs of birds. Thus they do not regard drunkenness and licentious with women as a sin. Even they even believe that the debauchery of their children is pleasing to the gods. When religion justifies an accidental thing, it uselessly joins the greatest spring there is among men. That is religion, right? Make people believe. It is believed that among the Indians that the water of the Ganges have a sanctifying virtue. Those who die on its banks are reputed to be exempt from the penalties of the other life, and supposed to live in a region of delights. Urns filled of the ashes of the dead are sent from the most distant places to be thrown in the Ganges. What does it matter if one lives virtuously or not? One will have oneself thrown into the Ganges. Okay. The idea of a place of reward necessary brings with it the idea of a region of penalties, When one hopes for the former without fearing the latter, civil laws no longer have any force. So therefore, that's a very important point here. The idea, in other words, the idea of a place of reward necessary brings with the idea of a region of penalties, right? The place of reward is place of penalty. When one hopes for the former without fearing the latter, civil laws no longer have any force. Men who believe in the certainty of rewards in the next life will escape the legislature. They will have too much scorn for death. They will have too much scorn for death. How can one constrain by laws a man who believes himself sure that the greatest penalties the magistrates can inflict on him will end in the moment only to begin his happiness, right? This is the danger of this. You kill that. I find my perfection is in the next world. It's not going to affect laws. It'll make laws useless. It will weaken the force of law and the lawgiver over people. Chapter 15, how the civil laws sometimes correct false religion. So how civil laws can correct false. Respect for ancient things and simplicity or superstition have sometimes established mysteries or ceremonies that could run counter to modesty and examples of this have not been rare in the world. Aristotle says that in this case, the law permits fathers of families to go to the temple to celebrate these mysteries in the places of their wives and children. A remarkable civil law that preserves the mores of religion. Right? Augustus forbade young people of both sexes to attend any nighttime ceremony unless they were accompanied by an older relative. And when he reestablished the Lupercanian festival, he did not want the young people to go run around naked. Right? So you have to have, in other words, this is where civil laws make up for maybe a problem with religious laws, right? Chapter 16, how the laws of religion correct the defects of political constitution. So therefore, like this, right? On the one hand, religion can sustain the political state when the laws are powerless, right? When the laws are powerless, religion can maintain it. Right? Thus, when the state is often agitated by civil wars, religion can do much of it establish that some part of the state always remains at peace. Among the Greeks, the Eleans, as priests of Apollo, enjoyed an eternal peace. In Japan, the town of Mekko, a holy town, is always left in peace. Religion maintains this regulation, and that empire which seems to be alone on earth, which has and wants to have no recourse to foreigners, always has within itself a commerce that war does not ruin. So therefore, this idea of this that an empire which seems to be alone on earth, which has and wants no recourse to foreigners, always has within itself a commerce that war does not ruin. In the state where war are not waged by common deliberation, and where the laws have not kept for themselves any means of terminating or preventing them. Religion establishes times of peace or truce, so that the people can do the things such as harvesting and similar work without which the state could not continue to exist. Every year for 4 months, all hostilities would cease between the Arab tribes. This is Ramadan, right? The slightest disturbance would have been an impiety. When each lord in France waged war or made peace, religions provided truces which were to occur at certain times, so holidays, religious holidays. Chapter 17, continuation of same subject. When there are many grounds for hatred in a state, religion must give many means for reconciliation. The Arabs, a bandit people, often did harm or injustice to one another. Muhammad made this law. If someone forgives the shedding of his brother's blood, he will be able to pursue the malefactor for damages and interest. But anyone who harms the wicked man after receiving satisfaction from him will suffer grievous torment on Judgment Day. In other words, if I've given him money and then you punish them, no, then you're going to be punished. Among the Germans, hatred and enmity were inherited from one's near relations, but these were not eternal. Homicide was expiated, it means removed, by giving of a certain quality of livestock, and the whole family received satisfaction. A very useful thing, says Tacitus, because Enumites are more dangerous among free people. Enemies, antimities mean hatreds. The hatreds and enmities. I can't say. I haven't pronounced it. Enmities. In other words, enmities are inherited from one relation. This is bad. And he says that in a free people, because enmities are dangerous among free people. I believe indeed that the ministers of religion who had so much influence among them, the Germans, right, took part in the reconciliations. Among the Melians, where reconciliation is not established. He who has killed someone, sure of being murdered by his friends or relatives of the dead man, gives himself up to his fury, wounding and killing everything he meets. So this is this is from the Voyages of Holland, right? This is interesting. This echoes the idea of the Greeks, the Amides, right? Where reconciliation is not established, he who has killed someone, sure of being murdered by the friends and relatives, gives himself to fury, wounding and killing everything he meets, right? Expecting to be punished. Chapter 18. How does the law of religions have the effect of civil law? The first Greeks were small, often scattered people, pirates on seas, unjust on land, without police, without law. The fine actions of Hercules and Theseus, that's Theseus, one word, makes clear Theseus, the great hero, right? Theseus makes clear the conditions of this basic early peoples, right? What could religion do to give a horror of murder other than what it did? That is, it established that that a man killed by violence was instant angry with the murderer, that he inspired distress and terror in the murderer and wanted him to give up those places he frequented. Now, this is Oedipus of Colonus, right? This idea of the furies and the punishments of the city. Frequented. One could neither touch the criminal nor converse with him without being tainted or being disqualified from making testament. This is again from Plato's Laws to end up at Oedipus Colonus, right? The town had to be protected from the presence of the murderer and had to be purified. Right? This is the idea. The laws of Plato's Laws again, Book 9. In other words, you had to. So 2 and 23 to Plato, that the nuns had to be purified. They had to purify it. The murderers could not come sit in the place. They had to be touched. So you had to. This is why Athens murder trials didn't happen in Athens proper. Murder was homicides were not done in the same court, but a more technical court, done differently. Right. That's a very interesting point. So the homicides deal with the raising of and this is the thing about the blood of the Furies, the ancient Greeks, that the blood of the dead would emanate the Furies, the primordial gods of blood, who will demand vengeance and retaliation. So the city could not tolerate those from because there'd be strife, right? So chapter 19, that it is less the truth or falsity of a dogma that makes it useful or pernicious to men in the civil state than the use or abuse made of it. So therefore, it's not the the truth or falsity of a dogma that makes it useful or pernicious. It's how it is used, right? The usefulness of it. Right? The truest and most saintly dogmas can have very bad consequences when they're not bound within the principles of society. And on the other hand, the falsest dogma can have remarkable consequences when they are made to relate to those same principles. So therefore, in other words, does they help? Does the truest and saintly dogmas can have bad consequences when they're not in bound, they're not coherent and in bounds with the principles of society. And likewise, a bad thing can have benefit dogma if they're within the bounds of the same principles. In that sense, the principles of society. The religion of Confucius denies the immortality of the soul, and the sect of Zeno did not believe in it. Who would say it? From their bad principles, these two sects drew consequences that were not just, but were admirable for society. The religion of Tao and Fu believed in the immortality of the soul, but from such saintly dogmas, they had drawn frightful consequences. Right. So this is this is from a Chinese Buddhism. Frightful consequences. Almost everyone in the world, in all times, the opinions that the soul is immortal, wrongly taken, has engaged women, slaves, subjects, and friends to kill themselves in order to go to the next world and to serve the objects of their respect or their love. Thus it was in the West Indies, that it was among the Danes. So it was still today in Japan, Masaka, Makasa, and in any other place on earth. So for this, it leads people to, that if they believe that this is the better place, they will opinion that the soul is immortal. They wrongly engaged women, slaves, subjects, and friends to kill themselves in order to go to the next world and to serve the object of their respect. So therefore, these customs emanate directly less from the dogma of the immortality of the soul than from that of the resurrection of the body. A consequence has been drawn from this, that after his death, an individual would have the same needs, the same feelings, and the same passions as before. From this point of view, the dogma of the immortality of the soul affects men prodigiously, because the idea of a simple change of abode can more nearly be grasped in our mind, and is more flattering to our hearts than the idea of new mode. So therefore, we compare the immortality of the soul versus not reincarnation, but the resurrection of the dead, right? The resurrection of the body. So these are not. This is the resurrection of the body seems to be different in kind because, in other words, the immortality of the soul. The soul is something different. It's not the body, and therefore the soul can be. It could be. I have a sense of I can live happy. I'm not going to be pain. But the idea of that I'm having a body, the same pain body this way. So therefore, it's easier for people to kind of grasp the soul and therefore engage in these kind of things. It is not enough for religion to establish a dogma, it must also direct it. This is what the Christian religion has done remarkably well with regard to the dogma we have mentioned. It makes us hope for a state that we believe in, not a state we feel or that we know. Everything, including the resurrection of body, leads us to spiritual ideas. Number 20, the continuation of the subject. The sacred books of the ancient Persians said, if you want to be a saint, instruct your children, because all of the good acts they do will be attributed to you. They counseled early marriage because children would be like a bridge on Judgment Day, and because those who had no children could not cross. Those dogmas were false, but they were also very useful. Right? They should have children, have to make sure they do well, because the good things they do will be attributed to you. Right? Chapter 21, metempsychosis. The supposed transmigration at death of the human soul of a human being to an animal into a new body of the same or different species. So this is that idea. The dogma of the immortality of the soul is divided in three branches: that of pure immortality, that of simple change of abode, and that of metatempsychosis. That is the system of the Christians, the system of the Scythians, and the system of the Indians. I just have spoken of the first two, and I shall say of the third that it has been well and badly directed, and that it both good and bad effect in the Indies. So therefore, this idea of transmotion to the idea of this body, resurrected body, right? So therefore, the system of the Scythians, the system of the Christians, the system of the Scythians, and that of the Indians. I have spoken of the first two, and I should shout the third that it has been well and badly directed. It has both good and bad effects on the Indies. It has given men a certain sense of horror of spilling blood. There are very few murders in the Indies, and one where one never punishes with death. Everyone there is tranquil. On the other hand, wives burn themselves when the husbands die. Only innocent people suffer violent death there. In other words, innocent. Chapter 22. How dangerous is it for religion to inspire horror for indifferent things? Okay. This indifferent. How dangerous for religion to inspire horror for indifferent things. A certain honor established by religious prejudice in the Indies make the various castes hold one another in horror. This horror, and this honor is founded solely on religion. I just had to check something. So this honor is founded solely on religion. These distinctions by family do not form civil distinctions. There are Indians who would believe themselves dishonored if they ate with their king, right? So therefore, their horror, right? They one another in horror, and that an honor is founded on religion. Okay, I think honor is the wrong word here, but therefore they would be dishonored if they ate with their king. These sorts of distinctions are bound to a certain aversion for other men, an aversion quite different from the feeling that should arise from differences in rank, in which among ourselves include love of one's inferior. Right? The laws of religion will avoid inspiring any scorn other than the scorn for vice, and especially will avoid moving men away from love and pity for men. So that's what religion should do. But religion does. The Indian religion instead says, no. There's horror of the other person in that sense, right? The Mohammedan religion and the Indian religion comprises an infinite number of peoples. The Indians hate the Mohammedans because they eat cows. The Mohammedan tests the Indians because they eat pigs. Right? This is in other words, this religion, this Indies have these two religions. One, they eat cows and pigs. Chapter 23 on festivals. When a religious order that works, when a religious or when a religious orders that work come to an end, it should have more regard for the needs of men than the greatness of the being that it honors. So, therefore, when a religious order that works comes to an end, a goal or something, right? It should have more regard to the needs of men than in Athens. The excessive numbers of festivals were great problems. Frequently, business could not be conducted among this dominant people, to whom all the Greek towns brought their differences. When Constantine established that one should rest on Sunday, he made this ordinance for the towns, and not for the people of the countryside. He felt that useful work was in the towns, and necessary work was in the country. So this is why he established that, okay, you can enforce it in cities, in the towns, in the urban areas, but in the countryside, no, they still they had necessary work. For the same reason, in the countries that maintain themselves by commerce, the number of festivals should be relative to that of commerce. Protestant countries and Catholic countries are situated in such a way that one needs to work more in the former than in the latter. Protestant more in the Protestant Catholic, and therefore the suppression of festivals suited Protestant countries better than Catholic ones. Okay, 33. William Dampier voyages. Right? When Dampier observes that the people's division vary greatly according to the climate, as hot climates produce a quality of delicate fruits, the barbarians, who find what is necessary instantly, spend more time amusing themselves. The Indians of the cold countries do not have so much leisure. They must continually fish and hunt. Therefore, they have fewer dances, less music, and fewer festivals. And a religion that would become established among these people should show regard for this when instituting festivals. So, therefore, that work climate. How does the climate? What is the climate? Does it require? Does it provide everything and therefore requires less work, or does do the climate requires us to work and therefore in a hot climate you can have lots of festivals, and a climate that requires lots of work and labor to do things, then no, you can't have festival. Chapter 24 on local religious local religious. Okay, this is a typo. Yes, lots of typos on local religious laws. WS laws. I don't see what's going on here with the Google. There are many local laws in the various religions. And when Montezuma persisted in saying that the religion of the Spanish was good for their country and that of Mexico for his own, he was not saying an absurd thing, because indeed legislatures could not have kept from having regard for what nature had established before them. So therefore, this, in other words, that the religions are products of often their locality. The local innate religions are there. So that came from the Spanish climate, because from were good for their country, and Mexico for his own. Right, that of Mexico is for his own. It could not have kept from having regard for what nature had established before them. The opinion of metempsychosis, that is, is made for reincarnation, right? Is made for the climate of the Indies. Extensive heat scorches the whole countryside. One can feed only very little livestock. One is always in danger of having little stock for plowing. The livestock reproduce poorly. they are subject to so many diseases. Therefore, a law that preserves them is very suitable to the police of this country. Therefore, you don't kill cows, you don't eat cows. Yeah, and it was, and that therefore they can, this is the highest soul that you can go into, right? While the meadows are scorched, rice and vegetables are grown successfully because water can be diverted to them. Therefore, a law of religion that permits only this food is very useful to men in these climates. Right? It's water can be diverted and therefore grown. Right. The flesh of cattle there is tasteless, and the milk and butter they get from them is part of their sustenance. Therefore, the law forbidding eating and killing of cows is not unreasonable in the Indies. There was an innumerable multitude of people in Athens. Their territory was barren. It was a religious maxim that those who offered certain little presents to the gods honored them more than those who sacrificed oxen. So therefore, there was an innumerable multitude of people in Athens. Their territory was barren. It was a religious maxim those who offered a certain little present to the god honored them even more than those who sacrificed cows. Right? This is what that I think. This is 37. This is from Euripides, right? 25. The drawbacks of transferring a religion from one country to another. If it follows that there are many drawbacks in transferring religion from one country, it follows that there are often many drawbacks in transferring a religion from one country to another. And Monsieur de Boulainvillers says, pigs must be very scarce in Arabia, where there are almost no woods and almost no appropriate feed for these animals. Besides, the saltiness of their food and the water makes the people very susceptible to skin diseases. The laws that forbid eating of pork could not be good for other countries, where pigs are almost universal food and are always necessary. In other words, eat things in garbage, and there's lots of food there for the skin, and that the saltiness of their food and water makes the people susceptible to skin diseases. Those are people not. Here, I shall make a reflection here. Santorino has observed that when one eats pork, when one eats pork, it transpires little, and that this food even greatly prevents the transpiration of other foods. He has found that the decrease was a kind of a third, almost known, besides that of the lack of transpiration, forms transpiration forms or sharpness diseases of the skin. Therefore, eating pork should be forbidden in climates where one is subject to these diseases, as in Palestine, Arabia, Egypt, and like that. So this is this transpiration and this means what that the exaltation of water or vapors to this stomata. So therefore, in other words, sweating. The skin is like this. Lack of this transpiration prevents it. In other words, eating porks causes the sweating to be less, and therefore, because of this, the water going through the skin, this would cause climates that make skin diseases. Therefore, there'll be the reason for this, right? Chapter 26, and this is the last chapter of this book. Monsieur Chardin says that there are no navigable rivers in Persia except that of the river Kura, which was at the border of their empire. Therefore, the old laws of the Gibbers, which prohibited navigation on rivers, was no drawback in their country, but it would have wrecked commerce in some other countries. So therefore, the Gibbers' laws, which restrained the old Persians, which destroyed commerce. Right? The continual application of lotions is a common usage in hot climate. This makes the Mohammedan laws and the Indian religion order that order that application. In other words, Mohammedan laws and Indian laws order that application of ointments. To pray to God in running water is a very meritocious act in the Indies. But how are these things to be executed in other climates, right? These things make sense in these hot climates. And in other words, when a religion founded on a climate runs counter to the climate of another country, it has not been able to establish itself there. And when it has been introduced there, it has been driven out. In human terms, it seems that cattle has prescribed climate. Sorry, it has seemed that climate has prescribed limits to Christian religion and to the Mohammedan religion. So if the climate kind of puts limits to things, he's saying that even if the religion, what it demands and what it requires goes to a climate which does not respond to it well, it's not going to accept it. It will what? It will when it's introduced here, it will be driven out. So that's how he ends this. It follows that it follows that it is almost always suitable for a religion to have particular dogmas and general worship. Right? They have general dogmas. In the laws that concern the practice of worship, there must be few details. For example, mortification, but not certain mortification. Christianity is full of common sense. Abstinence comes from divine right, but a particular abstinence comes from the right of the police and can be changed. In other words, the culture, the situation of the morals, and the situation. So therefore, general abstinence, for abstinence comes from the divine right, but a particular abstinence must come from the right of police, the right of the situation. Police, of course, not only the question of good morals, but also good well-being, good health, right? So, and therefore can be changed. This is why the kind of rules about pork eating make sense in the climate they're in. It makes sense. You eat pork, it just makes it very. It does. One, it can cause diseases if not cooked correctly. Two, another thing is he says that the pork, for some reason, make the body less sweating and proportion of wars. This is what Montesquieu says, and therefore this is why we don't allow it in that sense, because the failing of that leads to skin diseases. Okay, well that's it. Okay, if you have any comments or questions, please put it in there. And like this is going to be people say, "Oh my God, he's anti-Muslim." No, he's saying it's at certain climates, certain places. Um, um, put your comments, questions, and I see them. I'll comment on them or I'll respond to them and that stuff. If you like the video, like it, so that you can get, improve the support of this, help people like it. Share it with the friends. Encourage others to go watch it. The video. Next is if you didn't like it, well, you can say, "No, I don't like it. It was not so good," but say why in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe and please encourage others to subscribe. This will be a very good thing that happens in that sense. So, how come your eyes are looking at this way? It's because I'm looking at my screen myself for some reason. I don't know why. The picture there. Maybe I needed to change it like I did before to keep my eyes moving. Well, that's it. The other thing is, if you want to follow me on social media, the links are below. If you want to help me out financially doing these kind of things, you can do so if you subscribe to our Patreon. Of course, not who's there now. No, okay. It'd be nice if someone did do these, but I understand why it's not happening, right? Because there's not as massive people, like only maybe 0.1%, less 0.1% of people, or maybe even less 0.01% actually pay people. So you have to have thousands of people before you get like 5 or 6 people paying it. We went to contribute $5 or $6, $5 a month. I think that's the thing I have on the Patreon. But okay, that's it. Another thing you can do is buy, if you want to help me do it, you can buy one of my books. Listed below. That's it. Well, that's it. Take care. Again, these are posted Monday, Wednesdays. We have 7 more books to go before we finish the Montesquieu. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, when you see this, you'll be doing Schmidt again. I think you just started up on Schmidt's next thing because Tuesday, Wednesdays. No, no, Monday, Wednesdays are kind of like what I consider these big texts. And then Tuesday, Thursdays, for now, I'm doing these kind of more contemporary texts. Well, that's it. We'll take care. And Friday is always a live stream or a messing around, some video messing around. Okay, take care. Bye bye. See you later.